Chechnya, An Historical Basis of Conflict by Rob Robinson. Chechnya is a region in the northern Caucasus which has constantly fought against foreign rule, including the Ottoman Turks in the 15th century. Following the Russian Revolution of 1917, Chechens established a short-lived Caucasian Emirate, which included parts of Chechnya, Dagestan, and Ingushetia. In 1941, during World War II, a Chechen revolt broke out, led by Kazan Izrailov. Chechens were accused by Joseph Stalin of aiding Nazi forces. In 1944, Stalin deported all the Chechens in Ingush to Kazakh and Kyrgyz. Up to a quarter of these people died during the resettlement. In 1957, after the death of Stalin, then-President Nikita Khrushchev allowed the Chechens to return, and the Chechen Republic was reinstated in 1958. The authority of Soviet government gradually eroded. During the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, Chechen declared independence. In 1992, Chechen and Ingush leaders signed an agreement splitting the joint Chechen-Ingush Republic into two. The debate over independence ultimately led to a small-scale civil war, in which the Russians supported the opposition forces against Zohar Dudayev. The First Chechen War began in 1994, when Russian forces entered Chechnya under the guise to restore constitutional order. In 1996, the Kazakh ceasefire agreement was enacted, and then again in 1997, a provisional peace treaty was signed, putting an end to the first conflict. Key players during the first Chechen conflict were then Chechen President Zohar Dudayev and Russian President Boris Yeltsin. Dudayev gained his fame while serving in the Russian Air Force, becoming the first Chechen general in Russian military history. Boris Yeltsin was known for ruling with an iron fist, sometimes having a tumultuous relationship with Ronald Reagan, but being part of history during the dissolution of the Soviet Union, tearing down that infamous wall and allowing for peace to continue. The Second Chechen War was launched by the Russian Federation starting August 26, 1999, in response to the invasion of Dagestan by the Islamic International Peacekeeping Brigade. On the 1st of October in 1999, Russian troops entered Chechnya. The campaign ended the de facto independence of the Chechen Republic of Ishkeria and restored Russian federal control over the territory. Although it is regarded by many as an internal conflict within the Russian Federation, the war attracted a large number of foreign fighters. Key players of the Second Chechen conflict were Shamil Basayev, who was a Chechen militant, Islamist, and a leader of the Chechen rebel movement. Also, Vladimir Putin, Russian Prime Minister, then President at the time of the invasion, and Aslan Maskhadov, Prime Minister during the first conflict, President of Chechnya during the second. During the initial campaign, Russian military and pro-Russian Chechen paramilitary forces faced Chechen separatists in open combat and seized the Chechen capital Grozny after a winter siege that lasted from late 1999 to the following February 2000. The siege and fighting left the capital devastated like no other European city since World War II. In 2003, the United Nations called Grozny the most destroyed city on Earth. Chechen militant resistance throughout the North Caucasus region continued to inflict heavy Russian casualties and challenge Russian political control over Chechnya for several more years. Some Chechen separatists also carried out attacks against civilians in Russia. These were suicide and other terroristic attacks, plus assassinations. Two of the most notable attacks were the Moscow Theater and Belsin school crises. These attacks, as well as widespread human rights violations on both sides, drew international condemnation. On February 2, 2005, then Chechen separatist President Aslan Makhtadov issued a call for ceasefire in hopes of lasting to at least February 22nd. This call was issued through a separatist website and addressed to then Russian President Vladimir Putin. This was described as a gesture of goodwill. However, on March 8, 2005, then Chechen President Makhtadov was killed in an operation by Russian security forces. Shortly following Makhtadov's death, Chechen Separatist Council announced that Kalim Sudalayev would assume leadership. Sudalayev's tenure as president lasted less than a year, as he too was killed by Russian security forces in June of 2006. His successor, Doku Umarov, was a separatist leader, veteran terrorist commander, and a self-proclaimed emir of the Russian North Caucasus. Civilian losses was the highest reported casualties of the Second Chechen War. However, estimates varied widely due to who was reporting, whether it was the pro-Moscow government side or the separatist leaders' side. As in the military losses, which we'll see in 2 more slides, these claims cannot be independently verified, again due to who has been reporting such facts. In another attempt to report the number of casualties during the Second Chechen War, in 2007, Amnesty International stated that the Second War killed up to 25,000 civilians since 1999, also reporting that up to another 5,000 people are still missing. Military losses from both sides are impossible to verify and are generally believed to be higher than reported. In September 2000, the National Endowment for Democracy compiled a list of casualties officially announced by both sides in the first year of the second conflict. In April 2002, then Russian President Vladimir Putin declared the war in Chechnya was over. This was concurred by then Chechen President Ramzan Kadyrov. However, some believe the conflict did not really end until 2003 with the passage of a Moscow-backed constitutional referendum and the election of pro-Moscow President Ahmad Kadyrov. In May of 2007, again Amnesty International refuted claims by the Russian government that the conflict has ended. The overall security situation in Chechnya remains exceedingly difficult to accurately report. This is due to the Russian government's control over the media and the near monopolistic coverage that the pro-Russian government has to its citizens. As of 2009, Russia has severely disabled the Chechen separatist movement and large-scale fighting has ceased. Russian Army and Interior Ministry troops no longer occupy the streets. The once leveled city of Grozny, the capital of Chechnya, has recently undergone massive reconstruction efforts, and much of the city and the surrounding areas have been rebuilt at a quick pace. However, sporadic violence still exists throughout the North Caucasus. Occasional bombings and ambushes targeting federal troops and forces of the regional government in the area still occur. Chechnya's thirst for Western development is shown by the photo essay I put together. One can see the rebuilding efforts, marriages, females in politics, and the cars that they drive as a sign that Chechnya today is on the road to recovery.